Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, founder and editor-in-chief of All Israel News and our sister site, All Arab News, coming to you from Jerusalem with one of the best books I have read this summer and fall. We are making it our October book recommendation of the month as we head into October. It's the October surprise, I guess. This is a great book, and I've got the two authors on with me today. It just released this past Tuesday. Target Tehran, How Israel is Using Sabotage, Cyberwarfare, Assassination, and Secret Diplomacy to Stop a Nuclear Iran and Create a New Middle East. It's an amazing book, and you're going to find out why. Exclusive conversations these two journalists had in opening up one of the most dramatic look, this is going to be a movie someday. Literally, the Mossad, Israel's secret services, basically captured the nuclear archives of the Iranian regime and smuggled them out of Iran from Tehran, the capital, with nobody knowing, and then released the information, the intelligence gleaned to the world, showing that Iran had been lying for decades about when they would say, "Oh, we don't have any nuclear weapons plans. We just want a peaceful civilian nuclear program." So this is a book, a story that had been reported on, but no one had actually written the definitive book on how this has happened and what the implications are. So joining me are Yonah Jeremy Bob. He is a senior military and intelligence correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, the leading English language newspaper here in Israel. And Ilan Evyatar, who was one of the editors for the Jerusalem Post, was the editor of the Jerusalem Report magazine, among other journalistic roles. So first of all, Yonah and Ilan, welcome to All Israel News. Thank you for spending some time with me on your fantastic book.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for having us.
Well, it's an honor. Let's dive into, and what I want to do is start with the story, and then we'll go back to how you got the story, because I think both of them are interesting. Yonah, well, let's start with you. Why don't you set the stage of what you guys call in the book the heist? What happened, and then we'll ask Ilan, how did it happen?
Okay, so this was really, I think, the most fantastic espionage operation, certainly in modern history, maybe ever. We're talking not just, you see in the movies, wow, they broke into a secret facility and they used like a disk or a disk-on key to get to a computer, and then they leave with that disk, and that has all the data that you want. No, they took the original.
Right, that would be like Mission Impossible 1, right, where he sneaks into the CIA and he gets, on a thumb drive, all the names of the knock agents.
Right, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because first of all, they get the physical files. They take tons and tons of physical files. When Benjamin Netanyahu tells the world about this, this happens in January 2018. Benjamin Netanyahu reveals it to the world in April 2018. When he does, he pulls off in dramatic fashion, this curtain, so you can see, like a library bookshelves of files. That's basically what they brought. And when you said Mission Impossible, everything is like, all right, we've got, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes until the alarm goes off, until the people come in. And when I speak, to audiences about this, I say, okay, how long do people think, they had? 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 6 hours and 29 minutes. They took their time. They, knocked out all of the different, surveillance footages. We theorize, we can't say because of the Israeli censor exactly how they did it, but we theorize how, maybe it could have been done. And they use, special torches at 3,600 degrees to go through the safes, to slice through the safes, which they practiced beforehand. We give all kinds of details about a female agent who was involved using a special device walking by beforehand to figure out exactly how many people were there, when they were there, and all sorts of tactics that they used with fake out trucks afterwards so that they wouldn't be followed. Again, we can't say exactly how they got out, but we make some hints about the Azerbaijan border, and if they went across Azerbaijan, then the beauty of the Mossad is not just the explosions, the assassinations, but the audacity And basically, if they went across the Azerbaijan border, as many reports have said, as we talk about in the book, again, I have to say, as reports have said, because of the Israeli censor, the Iranians themselves smuggled the files out. You know, you have the Iranian smugglers, don't ask, don't tell. They think maybe it's drugs or who knows what else. So Iranians themselves are smuggling it out on behalf of the Mossad, their own nuclear secrets.
And given the amount of material, Yonah, these are large trucks. Like, it's not like they're not stuffing it inside the trunk of a Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, they are taking literally tons of material out, right? And they couldn't take it all because there was no way to get it all out in the 6.5 hour window.
Right. John Bolton said that he loved what they were able to do. He's like, but I would have loved taking everything. So exactly, they did an amazing job, but they still weren't able to take everything. But there just aren't operations like this where you actually take the original physical files. We have this funny part when they're talking about setting up Benjamin Netanyahu for the news conference, and they're talking to Netanyahu about how they're, what kind of visuals they're going to do. And they show him these pink pages, and he's like, I'm a big, tough, manly man. I'm not using pink pages. And they're like, that's the Iranians use. They use pink pages. That's the original. He's like, oh, okay. Right. So,
so this is just amazing. You've done a great job setting it up. Now, Ilan, why don't you share about how the Mossad discovered this thing, and in your reporting with Yonah in this wonderful new book, Target Tehran, your exclusive conversations with many high-ranking Mossad officials and others, but probably Yossi Cohen, the quite well-dressed, very handsome, I don't know who's going to play it, play him in the movie. Maybe if
I think it's going to have to be Brad Pitt,
his wife, he might play it. But anyway, the point is, talk a little bit about him and about this extraordinary discovery. Even before you get to the decision, I'll come back to you in a moment, Yonah, of Netanyahu making the gutsy decision to, yes, let's go get it. But first you have to find it. Ilan, tell us that story.
Okay, so before I tell you that story, I'm presuming
you have
a physical copy of the book, so I just
raise it up a little higher
to show that off for a second.
All the way.
Even a little higher. There you got it. Okay.
That's great.
Great.
Good. I look forward to getting my hands on a hard copy. I've been using the PDF version that you sent, and also listening to it on audio, which, by the way, I recommend to our audience. Look, you say, I'd love to read that book, but I don't have time. Of course you have time. Get it on your phone, on audio, Audible or something. And then, when you're shaving, when you're driving to the store, if you're a guy, offer to go get the groceries, pick up the kids from school, and just keep listening to the book as you help your wife. But anyway, go back to you, Ilan.
Okay, so Yossi Cohen was, prior to being head of the Mossad, Yossi Cohen was the national security director for Prime Minister Netanyahu. So soon after he switched offices and sort of moved into the office of the director of the Mossad, he had a conversation with Netanyahu, and they said to each other, Netanyahu said to Cohen, we have to show that the Iranians are lying. So, Yossi Cohen got all his people together, and they'd heard of the archive, and within a very short time, despite it being a real kind of needle in a haystack, or as one person said to us, it's not even a needle in a haystack, because there you start with the haystack and you know where to start looking. So he built a team, and he decided to micromanage the project himself, and off they went to look for this nuclear archive, which contains basically all the organizational knowledge of the nuclear project.
Yeah, and let me press you on something, because one of the things that you report on is that the reason the Mossad team had 6.5 hours is because the Iranian leadership decided to put these archives in a place that seemed very nondescript. It wasn't heavily guarded. The guards actually went home at a certain time and didn't come back till the morning. It wasn't because to keep this facility as low profile as possible, thinking there's literally no way that the Israelis or the CIA, anybody else will ever find it. And even if they suspect it, they're not going to think it's in such a place as this. Is that an accurate way of conveying what you guys have reported?
Yeah, absolutely. We see you've done your homework and you've given the book.
I read the book.
A very thorough read. So what happened was, after they found the archive pretty quickly, and then there was what Americans call it, a curveball. The Iranians decided to move their archive, and they decided to move it, as you say, to this very nondescript industrial neighborhood in northern Tehran called Sherabad. And, basically it's just this huge industrial sprawling neighborhood of corrugated iron roofs, not the kind of place you would suspect someone would keep the most
crown jewels
valued
of the Iranian
crown
regime.
jewels, their most valued state secrets. But, great plan. Only problem is Mossad was onto them all the time, and they followed them all the way there, and they sort of, obviously had their surveillance, etc. And by the time the raid came around, they knew everything about it. They basically knew the most intimate details of what was going on there. And so much so that, in fact, when on the night of January 31st, 2018, which was incidentally a pitch dark night,
Right, it's going to be great for the movie.
Fog rolling into Tehran from the Persian Gulf, and a very long lunar eclipse. So they knew everything that was going on, and even though there were some last-minute changes, they knew exactly where to find what they were looking for. So they cut through, as Yonah explained, cut through the safes, took what they wanted, and off we go.
All right. So now let me go back to you, Yonah, and go ahead.
Yeah, 2 points I wanted to add. Yeah, 2 points I wanted to add. Just because you asked about a little bit about the relationship with Yossi Cohen.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say about this. We have a whole note in the book towards the back about interactions with Yossi Cohen. Obviously, we can't discuss exactly when everything happened, but there's a YouTube video of me interviewing him in October 2021 at the Jerusalem Post conference, and he gives me a hug afterwards. You can see that we knew each other. What I wanted to add is, look, Netanyahu is the one who opens this up to the public because he makes this press conference. He lets everybody know that this operation happened. By the way, all of the former Mossad chiefs were very upset about that. They were like, great operation, but why didn't you just tell the CIA, MI6, international inspectors?
Right.
Why did you have to? Also,
you guys report that even senior IDF generals, including the Ramatkal, the chief of staff, who I also know was upset because, again, the release of it publicly went against the common theory of how you should handle the most sensitive coup. So, to explain that and how Netanyahu made the decision to go in because it was very risky, but also to release this to the world. Why did he do it?
Right. So I'm going to bridge that, but I just want to say Yossi Cohen is critical to Netanyahu here because he supports the decision to make it public, and he is the current Mossad chief. And without Yossi Cohen's support, I don't know that Netanyahu could have made it public, because all of the formers would have been against it. The IDF chief of staff you mentioned at the time, Gadi Eisenkot, would have been against it. So Cohen's support is critical for making this public. And I think one of the reasons that Cohen spoke to us is because he felt that at this point in history, making things public with Iran influences policy. And that was Netanyahu's consideration also, to not only sort of assist Donald Trump, who's the president at the time, excuse me, to pull out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, but also because that has a certain impact for a couple of years while Trump is president. But the impact that's still going on today, beyond the sanctions, which had some impact but not a permanent impact necessarily, is the IAEA, right? The international inspectors had been sort of hunky-dory friends with Iran, and 5 years later, they're still at loggerheads with Iran. They're still pressuring Iran. One of the reasons there hasn't been a deal yet with the Biden administration is Iran is insisting, close these probes into our past military applications of the nuclear weapons program, get the IAEA to close the probes, and the IAEA won't, because the evidence from the Mossad that they brought was so thick and so specific that at some point, even if sort of everybody knew before, but they were turning a blind eye, they couldn't do that anymore. And so I think Yossi Cohen and Netanyahu both strongly believed that making some of this public actually influences policy in a way that takes, if you could ever say that Iran had the moral high ground, a terrorist country, a country that's trying to get nuclear weapons, but they sort of did in the eyes of the Europeans and the eyes of a lot of the world up until this operation, and this took that away from them, and they haven't gotten it back since then. So I think that's why spoke to us, and that's why the two of them made it public. They took a lot of flack for that, but they wanted to influence policy. They didn't just want it to be an intelligence operation, that was quiet. Netanyahu is a big believer that if you want to influence policy, you need to make a public campaign, and this gave them a different kind of ammunition.
Yeah, I agree with him on that, by the way, but with Netanyahu and with Yossi Cohen. And I just want to ask you a little bit more, Yonah, and then I'm going to come back to you, Ilan. That was a huge risk, but in many ways, the risk of going public wasn't nearly the risk of actually sending or green lighting this operation, right? Because Netanyahu described himself. In fact, he recently did in some U.S. interviews, as he talked last week, when he was in New York on talking at the UN, and he's talking about a very biblical case. I loved that he opened up his UN speech with citing Moses from Deuteronomy 27:28. Right? He's like, look, God told Moses to tell the people of Israel, you have a choice: blessings on one side, curses on the other. And he said, Netanyahu told the world's leaders, you have a choice: blessings or curses. Peace with the Saudis and us and an expanded peace in the region, or decades of darkness of where Iran and Palestinian corrupt terrorist leaders are in charge, and we could lead to an apocalyptic war. I think Netanyahu's strongest role, for all his flaws and obviously tremendously controversial, but his greatest strength has been his ability to make the case. Not only to his own country, but more importantly, probably to the United States and to the world. He's very effective at that. But he also described himself last week in these interviews as, because of his, having been wounded in combat operations in Israel's most elite unit, Sayeret Matkal, losing his brother to being killed in the Entebbe raid, rescuing those Israelis in Entebbe, Uganda. And knowing that world of what the cost of war and terror is, that he's very cautious, that he described himself that way, and he is in terms of his use of force. So this was a risk, and I want to start with you and then Ilan's perspective as well, because if he authorizes this operation and it goes Carter-esque, right? It goes Delta Force at Desert One, 1970 or 1980, April, I think, and it goes badly. It's a huge black eye, which would definitely be public. So, Yonah, how do you assess the cost-benefit analysis that he and Yossi Cohen, but ultimately the prime minister, was making?
I think you're right. This was a huge risk, and we're talking about dozens of a mix, probably, of Israeli Mossad agents and Iranian dissidents who work for the Mossad on the ground, not one or two, dozens, on top of the hundreds of Mossad people around the world in a headquarters that are working on this. So people get caught, it could be a disaster, it can be embarrassment. And that's one of the reasons that they don't do it until they're not only moved on from the Obama administration to the Trump administration, but about, almost a year and a half into the Trump administration, at a point where they're getting, I guess that the operation is a year, where they're getting clear signals between Mike Pompeo is the CIA director, and Yossi Cohen, and clear signals from Trump himself that they want out of the deal, that they would love to get some evidence out of the deal. So then you have two different dynamics going on. One, if they do an operation and it succeeds, they know that they're going to have a willing partner to sort of trumpet the success of the operation. And two, even if it fails, if in the Obama administration, they would have been super critical of it and said, what are you doing? We could accuse you of destabilizing the deal that's working right now. The Trump administration, even if it doesn't work, is going to say, good try, like we were with you. They'll be annoyed that it didn't work out. But so that creates, a different atmosphere. And then the other thing I want to say, and Ilan can speak to this really well because he interviewed former Mossad director Meir Dagan and former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, is there's a history here. This isn't the first time that the Mossad acted in Iran. I think the operations that we're revealing to the world, and I think it's super cool that we're able to do it. Operations that happened this year, last year, most of it is in the last 5 years, which usually you have to wait like 50 years, 25 years for the Mossad to let you to disclose.
We're only just now learning about the intelligence failures of the Yom Kippur War. That was 50 years ago, right? So
exactly. So part of what's fantastic in this book is that and it's unique. I don't think there's been a book about the Mossad where current events are basically being revealed. But part of that is that they have tremendous history, Yossi Cohen did a great job, but his predecessors, had pulled off some fantastic operations, and had already, deep penetration in Iran. And maybe Ilan can speak to, some of the Meir Dagan, Ehud Olmert era type things, which I think laid the groundwork for Cohen, and Netanyahu to take things to another level.
Yeah. Please, Ilan, both your assessment of why Netanyahu took the risks, why he trusted Yossi Cohen to greenlight the operation, and I would love your perspective on that based on your very rich reporting.
I think Yonah has sort of covered very comprehensively the question of the cost-benefit analysis. So I'm not sure I have anything to add there. I will go to the history, as it were, of Mossad's operations against Iran, which began as early as the mid-1990s, late 1990s, when the Mossad already knew that the father of the Pakistani bomb, A.Q. Khan, was selling some nuclear know-how to the Iranians, but they didn't know the extent of what he was doing. In fact, Shabtai Shavit, the late director of the Mossad, who passed away very recently, said a couple of years ago in an interview that had he known what A.Q. Khan was up to, he would have got rid of him. So, even back then there were operations ongoing under Shabtai Shavit, under his successor Ephraim Halevi, but things really picked up in the early 2000s when Meir Dagan became the director of Mossad, and both he and Ariel Sharon made Iran their number one priority, and this was at the height of the Second Intifada. But Iran very quickly became top priority, and they started putting in place operations against Iran. These included, penetrating their supply lines, knowing what they were up to. And Ehud Olmert told us, we knew exactly what they were up to, and we would sort of damage it everywhere in the world, poisoning the supply chains, and then moving on to sabotage against facilities. And there were several assassinations of nuclear scientists. And Dagan would say, you can't eliminate knowledge, but you can certainly eliminate the people with the knowledge. And that without admitting in any way that Israel was involved. His style was a lot more discreet than that, let's say, of Yossi Cohen. Under Dagan, nothing was made public whatsoever. So you had these assassinations of several nuclear scientists, and then you had a major operation, which I'm sure you know about, Stuxnet, in which agents managed to get a computer virus into the heart of the Iranian systems and cause physical damage to Iranian centrifuges. And in fact, it was probably the first time in the world where an operation was conducted that crossed the cyber barrier into the physical world. And that operation was also an example of how Dagan felt it was very important to work with other agencies. And in fact, that the operation was called Olympic Games because the Olympic logo has 5 rings and there were 5 nations involved in the Stuxnet operation, including Holland, which is where AQ Khan worked and from where he'd stolen the blueprints. So Israel.
So this is interesting, Ilan, because again, we're talking about an agency by definition is a secret service. The Mossad is a secret service, and usually people say in the intelligence world that our successes are not known, but our failures are, right? Netanyahu, he's not just a cautious person. I mean, he's obviously a very strategic thinker, arguably akin with Ben-Gurion in terms of the strategic foresight of taking Israel to, dramatically different levels of, from its foundation to, a free market, capitalistic, high growth, high tech world, and obviously also into 4 new Arab-Israeli peace treaties in the Abraham Accords, which I want to talk about in a moment, even though our time is fleeting. But he's not just cautious militarily, but he's cautious. He's always been cautious, willing, but cautious in terms of intelligence, because in 1997, as I recall, he had a disaster in which he greenlit a Mossad operation to inject a poison on an Israeli or a Palestinian terrorist.
Khalid Mashal, the leader of Hamas in Jordan.
Yes, exactly. And he was in Jordan, but it went badly. And not only did it go badly, the Mossad operatives were captured and okay, an operation that goes badly, things go badly, life happens. But it happened in one of the only 2 countries where Israel had a peace treaty, a country with its arguably 70+% Palestinian, and where King Hussein, I'll say figuratively went ballistic, was so enraged, and basically demanded that Netanyahu provide an antidote for the poison as this man was dying, or the peace treaty was off. That's a whole story unto itself. But the point is, things like that affect how anybody, certainly a prime minister, weighs his decision making. So, Ilan, just talk a little bit more about why you think Yossi Cohen, who's I think is the critical player here, had his level of confidence and Netanyahu's confidence in him ends up letting Netanyahu say, all right, let's try this. Because that's a critical element of your book.
Right. I mean, that definitely would have weighed very heavily on him. And in fact, it wasn't even the only time, according to the UAE and other foreign sources.
You tell that story.
We tell that story in the book. Israeli agents, a large team of Israeli agents, supposedly assassinated Hamas's point guy for weapons deals with Iran, a man by the name of Mabkhuch. So, and that caused a rupture in relations with the UAE.
Because it was so well done. The operation was so well done that the maid thought he just died in his sleep. The police do an investigation. They think, oh, maybe he had a heart attack or stroke, whatever. But they don't even suspect foul play until a Palestinian terror group in Syria started looking around saying, hey, where's our guy? And then the Dubai police break open the whole story and figure it out.
Right. I mean, I interviewed Meir Dagan shortly after he retired, which was a couple of years after that incident, and his only comment was, very gruffly, "Did anybody get caught?" So, but yes, I mean, Yossi Cohen has a very, I would say, aggressive style and operationally, and he's also supremely self-confident. And I think he grew up as a case officer. He knows how to bring people around to his way of thinking. But
yeah, and you describe him as described by others as a legendary case officer. And I would just make one more note, and then I want to go to Yonah for one last question. I wish we had more time, but people should read the book, Target Tehran, because it's everything we're talking about. It's in the book. But again, the relationship between Yossi Cohen and Netanyahu, I think, is so important. And one of the reasons is because Yossi served as I think, Ilan, you mentioned earlier, the national security advisor for Netanyahu. Yossi was not necessarily the obvious choice to run the Mossad. I mean, he was certainly capable, as he's proven, but there were other people that were just as capable and sort of well-positioned, even particularly the deputy, who I believe Antonio Pardo was suggesting that his deputy be the next guy. But the fact that Bibi knew Yossi so well, that Yossi had been, I think, a deputy at the Mossad before, but also as his national security advisor, Bibi knew what Yossi thought, the way he thought, what his values were, how committed he was to this particular cause, and they were so much in sync. And the one other element was, you guys described that back in 2011, 2012, Netanyahu was working with his one-time political enemy, nemesis, Ehud Barak, who beat Netanyahu in 1999 and became prime minister. But now they're working together. Bibi's prime minister, Ehud Barak, is the defense minister, and they believe it's time to go launch an actual set of airstrikes to neutralize the Iran nuclear program. And basically almost everybody else in the security cabinet and higher echelons of the IDF are like, that is a bad idea. Probably especially Meir Dagan. And so I think Bibi learned from that he needs more allies in the room. Not that he wants to launch wars, but I interviewed Netanyahu's current national security advisor, Tzachi Hanegbi, last November for my TBN TV show, the Rosenberg Report. So this was just as he was just about to take the job, but hadn't yet. And he goes on the record and says, I believe Netanyahu is coming back to power, ready, willing, and able to order a full-on attack against Iran if the world can't figure out another way and if we run out of other options. Pretty striking to go on the record and say it. So I just think this relationship between Yossi Cohen and Netanyahu, as you two paint in the book, it's not the only relationship, but I think it's a core relationship. And this brings me to Yonah and my final question. And again, I hope you all that are watching this can see how much I love this book, because there's an intersection here. When I started leading evangelical delegations invited by first King Abdullah of Jordan to meet with him for hours and hours, and with President El-Sisi in Egypt, and then with Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and then twice with Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and later with leaders in Bahrain and Morocco, but every meeting, particularly in the Gulf, were these leaders at the highest levels telling me, who has no power, I'm not a billionaire, right? I don't have some massive political empire, telling us as evangelicals, and Israeli evangelical at that, our calculus has changed. We always thought Israel was the problem in the region. It's not. It's part of the solution. And Iran's regime, that's the problem. And if America's going to start to withdraw and we're on our own, the only people we can think that we can ally ourselves with is Israel. And they told me directly how impressed they were by Netanyahu's speech, which you discussed in your book. And of course, I discussed in Enemies and Allies, because I was there in Congress when Netanyahu gave his famous speech saying the Iranian nuclear deal was horrible. And this caused a huge commotion, right, in Washington, certainly here in Israel. But the Arab leaders at the highest levels told me this intrigued us. He was saying publicly what we thought privately about how dangerous this deal was. The UAE ambassador in Washington, right? Maybe right now, after Ron Dermer, maybe the most powerful and influential ambassador in Washington, Yusuf al-Otaiba. Otaiba tells me on the record in Enemies and Allies, when we discovered that the Obama-Biden administration was having these secret talks with Iran, we felt like we just caught our wife in bed. We'd been this level of betrayal, actually, and the magnitude of the Iranian threat caused the Arab leaders to start thinking, we have to do a fundamental assessment of who are our friends, who are our allies, and who are our enemies. One more point. Mohammed bin Salman tells me on my first visit with him, we asked him, what do you think of the Iranian leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader? And he says Khamenei is the new Hitler. So I walked out of there, and I told Israeli officials when I came back to brief them, I felt like I just walked out of a Likud faction meeting. The way MBS was talking is not your grandfather's thinking. So Yonah, why don't we finish up here by you describing how the Mossad operation, the heist, and Netanyahu's disclosure of this helped bring about not only those 4 Arab-Israeli peace treaties, historic, the Abraham Accords, UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco in late 2020, but I believe is setting into motion a deal that I really do believe is likely to happen between the United States, Saudi, and Israel in the next 4 to 6 months. Lots of complications there, but talk about the link, because it's not obvious to everyone who doesn't live in this region and focus on these things how the Mossad and the Iran threat leads to peace.
So I'm going to start with one word: commitment. And part of what the Sunni countries, you're talking about the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, that all joined the Abraham Accords in 2020, and the behind the scenes, country that's pushing all of this, Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince, MBS of Saudi Arabia, none of that happens unless he wants it, even though he hasn't normalized yet. He wants to normalize. He wants to sort of set a stage, trial balloon, see how it goes. He does want some more concessions having to do with the Palestinian issue, but basically he wants to go there already in 2020. He certainly wants to go there.
I have to say, Yonah, that things he said to me and my evangelical colleagues in 2018 and 19 that were off the record about his desires for peace with Israel and why he is now putting very much on the record. So I agree, and he's doing it in English, which to me, I would just affirm what you're saying, that he is now ready to go public and try to get this deal done in a way that he wasn't quite ready, but he was moving in that direction even in 18 and 19.
Right. So you have commitment from MBS, you have commitment from his Sunni allies. They see the commitment from Israel. All right. They see from the speech that Netanyahu gives in 2015. They see from the heist in 2018. They see from all of the operations, which again, because of the Israeli censor, we have to say are attributed to Israel, when Natanz the nuclear facility happens to blow up in July 2020, and half a dozen other facilities happen to just blow up also around the same time. Who knew? The Godfather, he was struck by a bolt of lightning. April 2021, another Natanz facility blows up. Karaj, another facility in June 2021, and we go on about assassinations and facilities. They see commitment from Israel. And the one place where there isn't that commitment, and this is all going together, is the United States. If there's one bipartisan thing that you can talk about in foreign policy in the Middle East between Obama, Trump, and Biden, is all of them are withdrawing from the Middle East. Not all at once, not necessarily all in a straight line. Sometimes it zigzags, goes up and down, but all 3 presidents, to one degree or another, have been pulling out of the Middle East. And so the Sunnis, the Saudis, the UAE are seeing the United States is less committed to us. They're not going to protect us if we're really, really down. In 2019, when a major Saudi oil field gets destroyed, the United States does not really come enough to, the assistance of the Saudis.
They didn't do anything. I was actually there. We were literally leaving the airport, and the drone strikes come in at the Aramco oil refineries, and nothing happens until Trump does order months later the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. But that's after an American gets killed, and that's after the protests at the embassy. If it's just what happened to the Saudis, Trump doesn't do anything, unfortunately. And so you can criticize all the different administrations for different things. So the point is that you have less commitment from the United States, whoever is the president. You have powerful commitment from a stronger, more assertive Israel. And you have commitment, from the Sunnis, and you put all of those together, and the Saudis and the UAE say,
we need Israel to help protect us. And in fact, it's already happening today. I'm not just talking about general intelligence sharing. There is already a regional defense network. There have been operations where Iran or proxies in Yemen have sent drones and other attack items to go after Sunni countries, and Israel has warned them and helped beat the threat. There have been, on the other side, instances where the Sunnis have given warnings to Israel, where drones or Iranian items have been going after Israel, and they helped Israel beat the threat. There's operational intelligence being shared by these countries. So that's the level of commitment. That's what transforms everything. And, again, the success of Heist, which, by the way, I don't know if Netanyahu would have just ordered it, but there's a lot of other things we talk about in the book. There's a major assassination in Tunis and in Malaysia in 2016, 2018. All of those go off without any problems. So that's what gives Netanyahu and Cohen the confidence to do these bigger operations, and those bigger operations give the Sunnis the confidence to say Israel can help protect us, even if the United States might not always be there.
Well, you guys have done a great job. Target Tehran is fantastic. Ilan, why don't you hold up the book one more time? We'll, of course, show on all Israel news. A little bit higher. Oh, you got them both. Great. I look forward to getting the actual hardcover copy myself. But
we'll get you a copy. It's not out in Israeli stores yet, but we got author copies. So as soon as I get back, we just got them right before I left. We'll get you an author copy.
I would love that. Thank you. And I just want to say to our readers and our viewers, I hope this conversation whet your appetite for one of the best books of the year about Israel and the Middle East and how rapidly it's changing and why. And this is a Mission Impossible movie. This is a Joel Rosenberg political thriller. This is Ocean's 11, sort of all wrapped up, and it's true. That's what's so crazy.
That's what's mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. And I think to wrap up a point that you guys both made, but particularly you, Yonah, is that this is a story that wouldn't have been told for half a century or more. But we're in a fast-moving environment. And I think the very fact that so many senior Israeli officials went on the record with you or gave you, background information that they wanted out and that you could verify and cross-check, it says a lot about how rapidly this is moving and how important this stuff is, especially as we move into an American presidential season where you have I interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy for 2 episodes of the Rosenberg Report, and I pressed him, you're talking about cutting off all military aid to Israel by 2028. You're talking about a strategic disengagement of the United States from the Middle East. And you're not the only one, but you're the one on my show right now. Do you really think that the Iranians are going away, that they're not going to be more dangerous, not just to Israel, but to the United States? So these are issues that are very much in the news. They're very relevant. And again, even if my readers, viewers don't care about the history or the future, if you're just looking for a ripping good yarn, Target Tehran is your choice. God bless you guys. Great to spend some time with you. We went over the time we had set, but I'm very grateful to you both. Ilan, Yonah, God bless you guys and enjoy a peaceful Sukkot. And for all Israel news and our sister media site, All Arab News, I'm Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this with your family and friends on social media so they can be aware of how fascinating this book is, and definitely go pick up a copy either in hardcover, it's probably in ebook fashion also, or in audio, which is what I did. Thank you from Jerusalem. God bless you guys.
Thank you.